Favorite superstars.
This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters.
Best of all, it doesn't cost a thing. Download the absolutely free iHeartRadio app now.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM. 915-544-5876. Or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, at least I believe we're still up there. Yep, still seems like it's working today. I know it's not a guarantee these days, but a whole lot of other ways, including, of course, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch.tv, because there's technically a couple Twitter pages now that I think about it. But in any case, those are all to say that there's a lot of ways to interact with the show, particularly not even just this time during the week, this time during the show, all of the above, because it is Friday, or at the very least, it better be Friday, or I'm in trouble in a variety of different ways. And Free for All Friday is what we like to call it, meaning that we are taking on all the calls, all the commentary, all of everything you can throw out, as long as you keep it clean. Otherwise, we will dump it, because we have certain rules that we have to abide by, but we often open up the floodgates of comments and just get into all of it, because there's more than we can get into in a week, even with a week of shows and just the local stuff. And there's a bunch of that happening in this case, and we'll certainly talk about that, including the results that you've heard some of, but the reprimand being issued for a city council representative over the taxpayer fuel card program. So we'll talk about that, as well as also the governor firing back against, well, a variety of accusation, and also orchestrating a lot of response to things as well, involving border security and the state level efforts. So there's a lot going on, a lot to comment on, but even beyond the stuff that we talk about right happening in our area, there's more than we could ever in particular get to within just a week. So this is the time we again open up those floodgates, get to all the comments, open up those phone lines throughout both hours of the program. So if you've got a burning desire besides one thing you want to get checked out for your doctor, we are definitely having a lot of commentary that has been needing to be addressed. So we'll get into that, and that phone line, of course, open 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM is the number to call into if you so decide to choose to do so that way, as we have some people joining us over on the social media as well on Hotoreda with the Happy Friday excited and dropping the love reaction, just an outpouring, of course, there, I'm sure hard to contain. I understand entirely, as we've got a lot of stuff going on. So let's just go ahead and dive. We'll dive into the calls in just a second, but just in case anyone has missed what we're talking about there, because this has been one of the bigger stories going on recently, citing so directly from the reporting from our news partners at KFOX 14, El Paso City Representative reprimanded over excessive use of taxpayer fuel card, noting that the City of El Paso Ethics Commission ruled Thursday night after another marathon-ish session. I mean, it was like 6 hours, 5-6 hours the first time, and I'm not quite sure how the duration was of this particular hearing, but let's just say their report filed around 11 p.m. after getting started around 5, and none of the pictures from the people in that room look like it's anyone's like, oh yeah, no, this was a breezy issue to go through and a quick one. So there's both statements from this representative in question, City Council Representative Cassandra Hernandez, having shared a statement, but the action, first of all, that the Ethics Commission voted unanimously to recommend a letter reprimand be issued for various violations of subchapter 2A1 and A7, and the motion carried again unanimously. And the letter of reprimand is, according to the City of El Paso's ethics ordinance, is issued when the Ethics Review Commission finds that a violation of this chapter was committed intentionally or through disregard of this chapter. So it's not the most severe thing that could have been recommended by the commission, including removal from office, but it's not at the top. It's not the least of the scale either, in which case it would have been said it was unintentional. I was trying to find the notes on what the scale relatively was, But yeah, some of the further things said during the part of this, including by Commissioner Williams, the head of the city's ethics commission, quote, Mrs. Hernandez and her own spouse, who both admitted that they used the card, that they shared the card, that they knew the PIN for the card, and that they both knew that her husband is not a city employee anymore, is not an officer, not an authorized user. And, of course, coming after the ethics complaint filed by a constituent of that district, George Zavala, there is the gas card purchase amount about $6,600, which was paid back by Representative Fernandez, and her part for her statement on this. A little bit small type here for some reason. Quote, after 2 days and 12, so it was another marathon session, my interjection there, getting back to her exact statement. After 2 days and 12 long hours of vigorous defense, the Ethics Review Commission has reprimanded me without sufficient cause or clear and convincing evidence. Full cooperation was provided on my part, and I willingly disclosed my personal checking accounts to showcase my household personal fuel expenses, which accounts for a third of the disputed fuel expenses in question. Additionally, I shared the exhaustive work I undertake for my district, which necessitates considerable work-related travel. I also shed light on the importance of my family support in fulfilling my responsibilities, and calls, among other things, the decision deeply troubling. And in the application to all members of City Council, goes on to say, conclusion, ultimately, I remain committed to serving my district and upholding the trust placed in me by the community. I will continue to work tirelessly in advocating for their needs and aspirations and in promoting transparent and ethical governance. So, okay, I mean, we'll see what if council takes up anything on this. Again, there was no real power to do anything like immediate when it comes to this commission on its own, but it's potential. There is also the possibility for there being an appeal in this decision, but as is further noted by our news partners at KFOX 14, this would require new evidence that was not shown to the commission. So I guess it could have been maybe if there was like a strategic move to specifically hold something back, which would not have seemed like a good idea, or at least very not the tactic that was being taken by the city representative in this case. And also, of course, it's worth noting that a lot of the stories and other examinations on this have come that this review of the whole situation started when there was an anonymous complaint placed about former city representative, Claudio Rodriguez. So those are some of the things going on, but of course that's not part of it. And I do believe actually Mr. Zavala in the comments there with us wishing a good afternoon, and I hope you're feeling better rested after those a couple of marathon sessions here. Thanks for joining us there as well as Ida Beza Gardner, happy Free for All Friday with the Wave, and John Browson saying, yeah, keep your hands off my taxpayer money. She's my city rep. Good decision. And some other commentary coming in, including Mando Mancanda in the spirit of Friday. I'll give it that, saying for the sake of the nation, dismantle all domestic spy agencies and abolish the IRS. And Matt Olson, once again, testing me. Let's see if I can do justice to this. Yo. Okay, I think that's good enough. Anyway, let's get to those phone lines now. That number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Ben on the east side here with us on the line right now. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Hello, Andrew. Just have one question.
Mm-hmm.
If the economy is doing so well, as we are to believe from what governments, what
Mm-hmm.
the Biden administration is saying, why is it that they say inflation is lower and wages are now starting to keep up with inflation? Why is it in October of 2022 there were 6 million Americans working 2 or more jobs, but today, guess what the number of Americans working 2 or more jobs is?
I'm not going to assume it's going. I haven't seen that exact report, but I'm not going to assume it's going in a good direction.
16 million.
Yeah, I'd believe that. I mean, underemployment, I mean, that was part of what we were talking about yesterday, and specifically with the interview about veterans issues, but it's by no means an isolated issue just for veterans either. I mean, the amount of people who are, and I don't think it's viable in Texas, but the whole on-call employment, that just seems insidious. I got to say, there's a whole lot of instances of people having a job but not making enough off of it, so having to get more job. And so the prevalence of that is no secret, and the fact that it's expanded is not perfectly surprising to me either.
Well, it does seem like the obvious answer is that Bidenomics is not working.
It's a hell of a phrase, I got to say. I would not have pushed that one as given the implications around Reaganomics and the debate that often happens on that phrase. Anytime you have to be like, yeah, I'm going to name a policy after myself, like you better be sure it's a damn good one, because otherwise it's going to be the albatross around your neck. I'm just going to say that.
Good. Anyway, that's all I've got today. You stay well, stay safe. God bless. And let's go, Brandon.
Well, fair enough. Well, thank you for the point in the call and the concern there and the issues. I mean, the economic concerns do continue to abound with that potential restarting. I think it's fully expected at this point of the interest rate hike. So we're still on this ride as much as I would like to get off.
They're lying to us.
Fair enough. Well, appreciate the vote. You have a good one there and a good weekend.
Thank you.
All right. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take that next break right now. And we'll get to more of the calls and the lines. Not quite full up because one call just ended. The line is available. So that number to call, of course, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Everybody's trying to get out of there on Friday. We got 2 crashes on the I-10 westbound, slowing people down. I-10 westbound at Loma Land, an accident most recently. A multi-vehicle crash there has 2 left lanes blocked. There's a backup to approaching Lee Trevino. A multi-vehicle accident from I-10 westbound at Geronimo is in the clearing stages. Tow trucks on the scene. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Inflation compensation is back.
Oh, yeah.
Demand your supply of $1,000.
$1,000? Oh.
Just listen for the keywords to text in to win $1,000. Happening now.
Listen for your chance to win $1,000 every hour, 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. with the inflation compensation on News Radio 690 AM. Brought to you by Charlie Clark Nissan and Charlie Clark Infinity of El Paso. Orale!
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com, and I sell custom blinds designed for do-it-yourselfers. Unlike stock blinds offered at big box retailers, Blindster blinds are custom made for your windows and shipping is free. Don't hire an expensive pro. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
If you're hiring, it can feel like you're trying to find a needle in a haystack. You can hope the right person comes along, or you can just use ZipRecruiter. And now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. In fact, ZipRecruiter has helped a lot of business owners find their needle in a haystack, like Marco, president of operations at Telly Tires and Auto Centers. Because Telly Tires has grown a lot in the last few years, Marco needed to hire everyone from a receptionist to a store manager to a head mechanic.
ZipRecruiter helps me find all the right people, even the most difficult jobs to fill. ZipRecruiter helps me keep my business running.
Take it from Marco and millions of other businesses who've used ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter can help you find the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/RADIO. ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Okay, so we have the car payment, the rent, utilities,
and the repair bill.
What should we do?
I know. I'm going to CashNetUSA.com. I can apply in minutes, get an instant decision, and if approved, we could have the money in our account as soon as the same business day.
When you need money fast, be the hero. Go to CashNetUSA.com to apply for the money you need now. The exact timing as to when your loan funds will be available will be determined by your banking institution.
That huge data breach from a few weeks ago has probably moved off your radar, but your information could still be on the dark web. LifeLock alerts you to suspicious activity, like someone using your info. If there's a problem, LifeLock's U.S.-based identity restoration specialists will work to fix it. No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions, but LifeLock will help protect your identity long after this breach is forgotten. Save up to 25% your first year. Use promo code NEWS at LifeLock.com.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Those are the main ones anyway. There's a few in between there, and the main one is definitely the Facebook page, which we've had up the longest. A lot of people chiming in over there, and including some people suggesting, well, I guess this is technically on the Twitch stream anyway. Armando Moncada saying it should have been a soccer announcer. I don't know. I mean, I sure could have done. I could be the guy that just steps in to do the goals, right? I'll just do that part of it. And Willie Jenkins also chiming in, TGIF or FFAF. I never thought about it that way. I guess I got to be careful how I say that one. Free for all Friday. Let's just make that clear here, as much as AF it may be. Any case, and Richard DeMille asking a new sport coat. No, one of the ones still in the repertoire. Maybe it just got better cleaned this last time. Any case, a lot of conversation going on over there about different things, including Angel Rueda with the busted when it comes to the city ethics complaint, found the possible sanctions that were on the list. And I'm not quite sure if this is really an order of severity, but it kind of seems like one that the possible sanctions would have been letter of notification, letter of admonition, letter of reprimand, and then recommendation from removal from office. So if that is indeed the scale, seems like it kind of is. I guess the severity of the terminology in it anyway. That letter of reprimand would be towards the bottom of the severity of the scale, with the bottom, or the very bottom of it being the worst, with the recommendation for removal, but was not that far. But like letter of notification, as is according to our news partners at KFOX 14, citing specifically from the city ethics code, that the letter of notification would advise on how to avoid future violations. A letter of admonition filed when commission considers the violation to be minor, and a letter of reprimand issued when the commission determines the violation has been intentionally committed. So, I mean, yeah. And Willie Jenkins letting me off of the Freudian, it's new slip, but anyway, let's go ahead and take that next set of calls right now. Again, don't forget that number, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM with the 915 in front of it. Can't forget that part these days, but line's full up at the moment. So let's dive right into the calls here. So we do have Raul in the Northeastern line with us here right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, about Mentiroso Marco, the mayoral candidate. Let me tell you whose work I hate, Marco. The National Academy of Sciences. Now, it was founded in 1863, okay, at the height of the Civil War. And it is the preeminent institution of the world's leading scientists, academics, and researchers. Now, here's what their website shows in debunking the claim that humans are not causing anthropogenic global climate change. This is what they say. Humans are causing global warming. Okay? Now, they deal with this claim. Today's global warming is no different from previous warming periods in Earth's past. Finding, false. Natural changes in the sun and the earth cannot explain today's global warming. Human activities are causing the earth to heat up in ways that are different from warm periods in the past. Today's climate change is driven by human activities, okay? Scientists know that the warming climate is caused by human activities because they understand how trapping gases like carbon dioxide work in the atmosphere. They know why those gases are increasing in the atmosphere, and they have ruled out other possible explanations. Okay, so now this guy who wants to be the mayor of El Paso, a city that's very dirty, that is experiencing historic consecutive days of 100 degree plus heat, but he knows better than the National Academy of Sciences, okay? Because he didn't go to college and he didn't study climate science, but he still knows better because his opinion, like those on the people on the right, trump those of the experts and the people in the academic communities. That's the first thing I want to say.
Okay, well, on that, I'm not sure if what Marco was saying yesterday was an official campaign announcement. I saw that there were some comments on that. We'll see if he calls in a little bit earlier. And I don't think he ended up confirming or not whether he had attended college yesterday, or maybe I missed that part. But in any case, let me just put it this way, and the whole dirty city part. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how that relates to this, or if that would be his fault in this case. But in any case. Situation is that, I mean, sure, there has been natural change that has happened over eons in the average temperatures of this country. I mean, there have even been shorter periods, the little ice age, things that have been caused. So the question is then with the rapidity of like how fast something is happening, because sure, something getting a little bit warmer over time may be expected. Something getting really hot really fast, well, then you might be on fire kind of situation. So there's level of severity. And I don't think it's reasonable, just flat out, that saying that man can have no impact given the worldwide global economy that has certainly existed and can certainly cause a lot of mess ups in a whole lot of ways, to say that, well, that's not really doing anything. It's nonsensical to me, as much as the people may say, well, I don't understand or disagree with the measurements of the science or any of those points that end up getting brought up, or perspectives, opinions, to say that, no, there's just no way that everything that gets pumped out all the time in all of the ways. I mean, we've had previous conversations on this programs about, like, say, the impact that can be seen from the prospected or proposed change towards more renewable energy, or specifically electric vehicles, the batteries that'll require. I mean, some of the scenes that have been coming out of the mining locations like the Congo, or, the Democratic Republic of the Congo in general, have been kind of horrific. One of the ones that sticks with me the most, and yes, this is a micro example, but in Arizona, I want to say it's near, I forget the exact town, but there's this one giant pit mine out there. And I'm talking about like even football stadium size logic or comparisons pale in comparison to this thing. And so that is a specific and exerted effort over, I believe, generations at this point. But that's kind of a case in point of how much in a concerted way there can be severe impacts for what is going on in a specific area. I mean, you also talk to people out of West Virginia and the mountaintop removal. Had a chance to some years ago, more than a decade ago now at this point, talk with some of those during my time in DC about their protests that they're actually doing, including one where they were doing the whole, it sounds shocking from this standpoint, but it's kind of cliche in DC, of chaining themselves to the White House fence because in order to get arrested, that level of civil disobedience. I know it sounds weird, but that's just kind of one of the things that occasionally happens with a certain amount of regularity. So let's put it this way, that's the question that I often come down on the most of, as people are going to, it seems, keep arguing about this, because one thing about saying, well, just trust the science, is also that's not how scientific process works. That ends up interjecting dogma to the whole thing that, okay, so even if we took this as rote, took it as, okay, granted, what are we going to do about it is probably where all of this really starts for me, because I don't think anyone was necessarily watching, An Inconvenient Truth for the first time and thinking, this Al Gore guy, he didn't end up being president, so this is what he's doing, and he's just lying the entire time. I mean, someone may have thought that, but it mostly came down to so wait, you're going to want us to do what about it? Okay, wait, let's go back and look at what you were saying, and I'm not sure I believe that in the, Marco Arm said, yeah, Bisbee, that's what I thought it was, Bisbee, Arizona. I mean, it's huge. I'm pretty sure it can be seen from space, I would be willing to bet. So, yeah, in any case, I mean, if you want to talk about this, I think the most reasonable way for a local show, I mean, yeah, it's Friday, don't worry, I still remember that, but is about what are we going to do about it? One of the better ones that's come up locally is like, okay, maybe if we're looking at wetter weather happening, even just because of the most recent weather patterns we've been seeing, where we've been hot as hell, but then also seeing those afternoon rains, I feel like more often than not, maybe like stop building in arroyos, and maybe stop using loose rock as the ground cover everywhere, because it just keeps washing away.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to tax the energy plutocrats to pay for all the work that's got to be done. Now, on another subject, the world's biggest problem, talking about Marco wanting to run for mayor, are power seekers and the powerful psychopaths. And this is according to Professor Brian Klaas. Now, he's a professor of political science and global politics at the University of College London. And he has a new book titled Corruptible: Who Gets Power and How It Changes Us. Now, Professor Klaas raises the question, why is is it important to understand power? Now he says this is something that the ancients wrote about. And by the way, right now, they've closed down the birthplace of democracy and Western philosophy. Athens, the Parthenon, and the Agora where Socrates and Plato walked and talked and philosophized because it's too damn hot for tourists and workers, because the powerful energy plutocrats have heated the planet. Now Professor Klass points out that humanity has achieved incredible advances and progresses in society and technology and solving incredibly complex problems like splitting the atom and sending man to the moon and back. But we still have awful leaders, people who we do not respect, who govern our lives. And he says that most folks agree that we have a dysfunctional power in society and that we're stuck with all the wrong people in charge of our lives. And he also says that this myth of meritocracy myth, it's a myth. That is that the best in our society gets the elevator right to the top. He says that happens too infrequently, and that the reality is that that's not just what you know, but who you know, and that these people who seek power and get it too easily exhibit three traits. Interesting. He calls them Machiavellianism, of course, over the first political philosopher, if you want, political sciences, Niccolo Machiavelli, who was an advisor to the Medici family there in Florence, and narcissism. We see that. We see that big time in Trump, and psychopathy. Mm-hmm. So, it's really, really scary, the kind of people that have gotten power in the past, and that the ones who seek power have these kind of traits. Another guy called them homo politicus. They're not like the average individual. They think they got the answers to all the problems, and a lot of them have their finger in the air, to see which way is blowing, and of course their hands out for the people who, control the first primary.
I mean, sure, there is the kind of inherent, the person who least wants power, as long as they have like other qualifications, is the person I'm going to tend to most want to hold it. And yet it's the dichotomy, isn't it? That person is therefore not going to seek it. So unless we figure out some, I don't know, weighted jury selection system. I mean, it's an interesting concept that I know has been explored in at least like short stories, the idea of, all elected offices, it's not just jury duty anymore, which as a minor programmatic note, we might have a fill-in day coming towards the end of this month because, I got that dreaded letter. So we'll see what happens a couple of Mondays from now. Hoping I'll get that text saying it has been canceled as it usually happens, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that, much less be held in contempt or anything like that. So we might have a fill-in show coming up just as a note. But what I will say is that it doesn't work, of course, to say that, how do we find the person who least wants power? Because they're going to say, no, I don't want it, or never go for it. I mean, what was it that Winston Churchill said that, I think it was mostly about the economic system, but it still can apply, I think, to our system of government. This is the worst system ever designed, except when compared to all of the other systems that have been tried before. Because, I mean, the idea of hereditary power, that works out as long as you're actually raising them right, which hasn't exactly worked out. The idea of it being whoever has the biggest stick, that one has also had problematic issues, because at the very least, when all you have is it's called a hammer instead of just a stick, everything looks like a nail, and fascism doesn't work either. So there's certainly worse ways to do this, and there should be, with the ways that we have written down and dealt with certain rules and had things in place, could be issues with this one as well. It's definitely not a perfect system. You're never going to see me saying, nope, this is the only way it could ever be. Anything else would be absolutely flawed, and I will die on this hill. No, this is definitely not the hill I'm going to die on, because we do strive for a more perfect union. And that's about the only thing we can do. Again, if men were angels, we wouldn't need half of this stuff that we go through and have to discuss. But in the meantime, I don't know if the two-party system, I'm pretty sure the two-party system is not the way to go about this, but it's the one we're stuck with until we have some other huge systematic changes. And I mean like Article 1, Section 1 kind of stuff of the Constitution, which, as much as there has been the phrase constitutional crisis thrown around, I feel like a lot in the last few years, to think that we have been at a level to achieve that, we're talking like beyond what the Civil War caused or had happen to the changes that sought to the Constitution. It would be even further sweeping than that. So the true kind of crisis that would take that, as opposed to it just being let's see how other countries deal with it, I don't think it's feasible to do without there being really, really, really unpleasant and or upheavals type of situations happening, which the question then is the juice worth the squeeze. So appreciate the point of the call and the commentary and the ideas and at least the possibility of discussion of them. But let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we'll get to more calls on the line because, yep, it's Free-for-All Friday. This is what we do. This is kind of who we are, talking about the things that affect us in the borderland and, of course, on Today Beyond. So if you want to get on the line, of course, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. At least one person is dead after a violent crash in Far East El Paso. The top of one of the cars was sheared off in the crash, leaving only a mangled frame behind. The crash happened this morning on Gateway East near Eastlake Boulevard. 3 middle lanes were closed while sheriff's deputies cleared the scene. 2 cars were involved in the crash. A second person was taken to a local hospital with life-threatening injuries. A water rescue today in El Paso's Upper Valley ended with a body being pulled out of the water. The call went out at Donovan and an area near Rosa's Cantina. About 30 minutes later, the fire department tweeted that a body had been recovered from a canal. They turned the scene over to law enforcement. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
That earlier multi-vehicle crash, I-10 westbound at Loma Land, has been moved off to the right shoulder. All the vehicles are off to the right. Lanes are back open, but you're looking at a 13-minute delay that goes back to Zaragoza. Traffic is stop and go. Traffic's stop and go on the I-10 eastbound, too, from Vinton in the Upper Valley down to Red with a 15-minute delay. Also heads up for an earlier crash, a minor accident, I-10 westbound at Paisano Drive. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. As we go into the weekend, not quite as hot. So some good news there, about a 10% chance of a storm for your Saturday as well as for our Sunday. Not seeing any weather warning for heat, not seeing any advisories or warnings, so good news as well. High around 101 for your Saturday. Continued not quite as hot for your Sunday with a high around 102. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. If you're like many people, you may think custom blinds is a job for expensive professionals. Well, at Blindster, if you have a tape measure and a screwdriver, you can install our custom blinds and save big. Plus, we guarantee they'll fit. Blindster.com.
Are you a business owner, CEO, or responsible for marketing? If you are, iHeartMedia can help you reach your goals and find new customers. We reach more consumers in your target area than anyone else. And we can give you access to those potential customers more cost-effectively across radio, digital, podcasting, and social. We'd love to show you how iHeartMedia can work for you. Get started today at iHeartAdvertising.com. That's iHeartAdvertising.com.
Attend the El Paso Gun Show this weekend, July 22nd and 23rd at the Forum Ballroom on 3800 Maddox in El Paso, Texas. See dealers selling the finest in modern guns, custom knives, ammo, scopes, rifles, shotguns, and more. Buy, sell, and trade at the El Paso Gun Show this weekend, July 22nd and 23rd at the Forum Ballroom, 3800 Maddox, El Paso, Texas. Get $2 off admission by going to azgunradio.com. That's azgunradio.com.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso. Weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. And let's talk El Paso.
Wendy's BOGO $1 deal is back at participating Wendy's. Buy a Dave single, spicy chicken sandwich, 10-piece nugs, or medium frosty, and get another for $1. Double your deliciousness. Hurry, this BOGO deal won't last. This report is sponsored by Wendy's BOGO $1 deal.
Why should you volunteer with Meals on Wheels?
I never thought that 5 minutes could make so much difference in the lives of 2 people, but it has.
Drop off a warm meal and get more than you expect. Volunteer at americaletsdolunch.org. Brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app. There we are up on the video, facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of conversations, a lot of interesting, different things coming up in the comments. It's kind of always that way, but of course, it's Free for All Friday, meaning that we're delving into some of those issues more, but then also taking those phone lines and phone calls open throughout all of the show, if full up at the moment, but keep that number handy, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM, Talk El Paso. Of course, brought to you in part by Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. Sure to find them at 950 Crockett Street here in El Paso, right across from I-10 from what's currently Sunland Park Mall, but soon to be the shops at Solana. I doubt that there'll be the Dodge at Solana or anything like that, because me and Sunland Park Drive are close enough to it, but it does make me wondering about other rebranding that'll happen because of it. Still Sunland Park Drive. Anyway, 950 Crockett Street across from the mall on the west side. Easy enough to say it that way. And of course, they've got the huge deals going on right now. Amber may or may not be out there, or maybe just wrapped up, actually, now that I think about it. But in any case, be sure to check them out for those deals. And of course, a lot of commentary coming in, like Bernadette Bandicole saying a happy Friday. And Ion Grimm also agreeing with the previous caller, saying, I agree with one thing. They said we have terrible leaders. What was it? I think it was one of the children of Ronald Reagan. I forget who it was, saying that that there's this box out there. This is me paraphrasing his quote. This box that if you deal with it wrong, handle it the wrong way, or even just leave it alone for too long, the world explodes. And then every 4 years, we have a bunch of guys come along and say, give me the expletive box. And that's our elections process. Simplified, but it has a ring of truth to it. At least it has always struck that way to me, I gotta say. Anyway, and also one other questions, including asking, so he's blaming climate change on the hot air coming out of Marco's mouth, Richard Janicek saying, and other suggestions such as tax the trolls. I mean, again, taxation is not a solution, I guess, is the part I keep coming down on. It's a means to an end. It's not if you expect people to just stop doing it. The thing when you start dealing with taxes and particularly incentives or breaks towards it, if you're going to say, nope, we're going to tax you to an oblivion as a way to, we can't outlaw your business, but we don't want you to do it anymore. That's one thing that has its own definite implications to it. But if you're saying that, well, we want to use that to do something else, okay, talk about the something else. Talk about the other part, the direct solution, because that's what I think the important bit is. But also locally, what we can do is about the only thing we can really handle here. Because, I mean, there have been some fantastical things suggested, including, space mirrors or darkening of the skies, all of which have massive implications to them, but separate issues. Anyway, let's get to those phone lines again. We do have Andrew on the west side here with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Before I go into my subject for Friday,
sure,
I must respond to Raul.
Fair enough.
Yes. I wish Raul would voice his concerns to President Xi Jinping. China is one of the biggest polluters, twice as much as the United States.
I mean, there's a hole in the technological divide, and one of the reasons that it kind of ancillary to what you're talking about here, but related, and I'll get to it in here in just a second, is that, I mean, a lot of people like technologists. I mean, when we're talking about the AI revolution that we may or may not be seeing, it's not actually artificial intelligence, just pretty clever algorithms, or maybe not that clever, with all the news coming out recently about how the degradation of certain generations of these systems are, but that still like a half of the planet does not have reliable or any access to electricity, the population that is. And so in all of these fantastical growth things, I mean, one of the major issues probably with this century, I'm going to call that one right now, is about the continued development going to be required for there to be continued development, particularly in the third world. I mean, the global south in general, South America, Africa, parts of China, Southeast Asia, places like that, like they are wanting and struggling to get up and catch up with the rest of it. But the technology that this sector of the world and the northern part of the Western Hemisphere used was pretty messy. I remember seeing it's not exactly a documentary, but there will be blood about everything going on with the original oil wells, including the drilling techniques being lugging a giant sharpened piece of metal and then just letting it free fall into the ground to break further. Like, we've had worse ways of doing this ourselves, but now we've gotten over that part, and to expect them to not try to do it themselves is unreasonable. But at the same time, yeah, Xi Jinping, good old Winnie the Pooh himself, has very much been okay, do as I say, not as I do. Oh, you all should totally clean up while we do everything we can to produce as much as we can, regardless of the methods we do it in. My paraphrasing of his standpoint, anyway.
Yes, quite true. Well, like I said, my advice to, and I'm being facetious, my advice to Frankie and Raul, okay, if you're afraid of carbon emissions, go live on Mars. Zero carbon emissions.
Or, I mean, I may suggest some other ones like maybe Venus, but that's a separate issue.
Yes. My second point, I was just reading concerning Hunter Biden and the sweetheart deal he was given. Any other person would have been in federal prison. And let me start with the gun charge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 18 USC 922. Okay, lying on that form, it can get you up to 15 years and a $250,000 fine. Okay, not filing an IRS form or tax evasion. You probably remember from your history, got Al Capone 11 years.
Oh, yeah. If you do illegal activity, you're still supposed to report that on your taxes.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
it's very true.
But anyway, like I said, there's a two-tier justice system, and unfortunately, we're seeing what political influence can get you.
Yeah, and I think the form you're talking about there was the ATF 4473 for transfers and applications for the NICS check system.
Yeah, and that form has since been revised.
Yeah, that's true. And among some of them about being addicted or I remember the exact, it's been a minute since I filled it out, but it's about you're not marijuana, among them a user of illicit drugs or addicted to them, I think is at least part of what it's getting at anyway.
Yes, and now that you mentioned that, if you are a user of medical marijuana, although it may be legal in your state, you're still prohibited from acquiring a firearm under federal statute. So, if you put yes on the user of marijuana, you're going to be denied that firearm.
I mean, yeah, marijuana is still a Schedule 1 substance, meaning the tippy top of the very bad list and the serious consequences, which, I mean, I'm not going to say that necessarily matches up with public conception of it. I mean, that's more from the, reefer madness type of hysteria era from it, but it has not as much as legalization, statewide, and it's been floated nationally, but I don't see that happening, at least in this current political climate. You go through one of the federal checkpoints that surround us in any direction and north of the border that you're going to head, and you're going to run into someone and you're just being like, oh, no, it's cool, it's legal in this state, and you're going to have a bad time.
Yes. Well, I've heard people say, well, it's legal in New Mexico, and I basically say, well, no, it's not, because it's still illegal under federal statute, which that trumps, no pun intended, but that trumps state law.
Oh, it absolutely does, and that's why, I mean, there's an argument that it's essentially permissiveness in its own way, because, I mean, frankly, for all of the industries that essentially advertise that they are dealing in a Schedule 1 substance, but under the provisions of state law, the ATF or frankly any of these other federal organizations, if they got a wild hair / an administration decide to, could absolutely crack right the hell down on that. Now, the political consequences may have been, significant, but it's still within the legal realm of possibility.
Right. Correct. Well, Andrew, something else I wanted to discuss, but it can wait till next week. I know you have more callers. Anyway,
fair enough.
I turn the mic over to you.
All right. Well, appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Yes, thank you.
All right, and with that, so let's go ahead and take that break so we can come back and get to more calls on the line, get my breaks back out of whack like I sometimes get to towards the end of these hours. So it's Free for All Friday. We're doing our thing, and we're taking those calls. So, and someone just jumped on that available line. So keep the number handy, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Well, one accident gets cleared on the I-10 westbound at Loma Land, and now we've got another crash that's blocking the left lane. Westbound on the 10 at Loma Land, expect some delays there. Northbound on the loop in the East Valley at Iron Medics, there's a crash that's blocking the left lane. A minor accident, I-10 westbound at Paisano Drive from earlier, still has a couple of vehicles off on the left shoulder. Stop and go traffic, I-10 eastbound, Vincent to Red, 12-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by ComparionInsurance.com.
Like to shop local? Go to ComparionInsurance.com. Their agents are local insurance experts finding you the right insurance at the right price from national carriers. Comparion Insurance Agency. Local agents. Expert advice.
Hey, El Paso and surrounding areas. This is Ivan Ochoa, General Manager of Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. Thank you for making us #1 in new car sales again. We make buying a new or certified pre-owned vehicle fast, fun, and easy.
Our goal this month is to break our all-time sales record, so Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat will do whatever it takes to make a deal. Get 10% off MSRP on 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star trucks, $4,000 off MSRP on 2023 Jeep Gladiator trucks and super low 1.9% APR for 72 months, $2,000 off MSRP on 2023 Jeep Wrangler, plus 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo, $3,500 off MSRP and 2.9% for 72 months. Worry about your trade or credit? Don't sweat it. Our aggressive lenders will push to approve your credit, even if your credit is less than perfect or if you owe more than the trade is worth. Get huge savings and more for your trade during the Make This a Summer Sales event at Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat at I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount for CTNL. 1.9% APR is $1,471 and 2.9% is $1,550 per thousand finance. On select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Attention, your money is now controlled by the U.S. government.
Picture a world where your every purchase is monitored, tracked, and controlled by those in power to suppress the freedoms of those they see fit. Hi, my name is Jason Hansen. I'm a former CIA officer and New York Times bestselling author. And right now, I've become very focused on the impending rollout of the central bank digital currency. This is not a work of fiction. It's a terrifying reality looming on the horizon. But there is a bit of good news. I've partnered with Advantage Gold to offer you a solution. They are specialists in converting your traditional assets, like those inside an IRA or 401k, into tangible assets such as physical gold and silver. Don't allow your money to be controlled. Claim your free gold protection kit from Advantage Gold. Call 800-900-8000, 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000.
Advantage Gold is not an investment advisor or a tax advisor.
Call 800-900-8000.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Want to save big on custom faux wood blinds, shutters, cellular shades, and more? Shop Blindster today and save up to 50% over comparable blinds from brick and mortar stores. Get custom blinds at low prices and free shipping at Blindster.com.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Ruli's International Kitchen, their next taco takeover by Chin Gong Chao is tonight. And if you want to come and get those or cool off with their refreshing frozen sangria, those are just some of the newer and ongoing features they got going on. The taco takeovers happening every Friday and Saturday night this month. So check that out. Plus, they're all, of course, great menu. Just a great little gourmet dive, 4176 North Mason, not too far from our station, not too far from the Executive Center exit off of I-10. Give them a call. Make your reservation for your everyday occasion or those special celebrations, including, of course, open for brunch Saturday and Sunday and dinner service on the weekends, 915-313-4806, or find them online, rulisik.com. That's rulisik.com.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. It is Friday, or Friday, as some put it, and that means it's free for all Friday. We're taking on all the comments and calls we can, squeeze into 2 hours of the show, which is never quite enough, but we do our level best. And I'm not quite sure what this one's in reference to, but Mondo Mancada, a lot of dinosaurs made the ultimate sacrifice for, I'm not sure if that's about the airtime or the energy being used, but in any case, I mean, we appreciate it and their service. In any case, a lot of other conversations and, of course, phone calls on the lines coming in. One just popped up, but then got filled up pretty immediately, so keep that number handy, 915-544-58765 for KTSM. Let's dive straight back into it right now before we can get squeezing what we can before the top of the hour, but don't worry, hour 2 is coming. We do have Joe on the west side here with us right now. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Andrew. Hey, Andrew, I needed to mention something that one of the Wikipedia twins said. I think it was Wikipedia twin number one mentioned that
Okay.
the heat that we're experiencing right now is the hottest in the history of mankind. Well,
Right, the average temperature, right.
I think he was over. I mean, well, he overblows everything. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you was that something that I experienced, and because of all the whistleblower situations going on right now.
Okay.
I was a whistleblower in a whistleblower situation.
Okay.
Some years back, and I was alerted to a problem. I checked it out and prepared a report that was well documented. I submitted it to the Inspector General. And, once you do that, you kind of sit back and wait to see what happens. And I thought maybe a year or so, they'll come and check it out. Well, within weeks, they were at the FBI and the IG were knocking at my door. They needed more information and all this, and we went to all these meetings and stuff. And then after that, I waited and I waited for months, and nothing happened. I decided to call the inspector in charge.
Okay.
And he told me that that they have found a lot of corruption, but that the Obama administration did not want to prosecute because President Obama did not want any scandals under his presidency. Well, guess what? The people got off. I was terminated, and the people that were doing the corruption, they all kept their jobs. So what happened was, now we're finding out that all this that we're finding out about the Biden cartel and the Biden cocaine cartel, we're finding out now happened under Obama administration. And then Obama was the one that gave us Joe Biden. Joe Biden is president right now because Obama appointed him president. Well, I mean, I think that's just hypocritical, and it's funny to me. It's funny, but that he didn't want any scandals under his presidency, and he's got the biggest scandal that ever happened. One of the biggest scandals in the history of this country. Well, the other thing I want to talk about is something that I talked to you about before.
Briefly, if you can.
And I need to mention that growing up in El Paso, and back in the 70s, there were very few black citizens living here in El Paso. I think it was 2% or under 2% of the population was black back then.
Okay.
I went to high school in central El Paso, and I think, if I remember correctly, there was only one black student in my high school. And the reason I bring this up is because of something that I brought up 3 or 4 years ago, and then I was called the intellectual dishonest by the Wikipedia twins. And that was that, they're trying to change the policy or the laws in this country to make payments for reparation of black students. Now, here I am, and I'm sure this happens throughout the Southwest, even into California. I didn't know any blacks. I hardly knew any blacks. I didn't get to talk to or really become friends with any blacks until I went in the military.
Okay.
And what happens is now they're saying that I'm going to have to pay taxes, higher taxes, because I need to pay reparation for black slaves because of black slavery. And I'm like, oh shit, I never owned any black slaves. And the people that I'm going to pay reparation to.
So we appreciate passion in certain ways, but let's just say that there are certain things that you can't say on the radio. So I take your point there, but let's just say there are those deadly words that we're not able to. So appreciate the point in the call. We got to take that break anyway. So coming out of this break, we'll get to more calls in the line. So that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Well, one accident gets cleared on the I-10 westbound at Loma Land, and now we've got another crash that's blocking the left lane. Westbound on the 10 at Loma Land, expect some delays there. Northbound on the loop in the East Valley at Iron Medics, there's a crash that's blocking the left lane. A minor accident I-10 westbound at Paisano Drive from earlier still has a couple of vehicles off on the left shoulder. Stop and go traffic, I-10 eastbound, Vincent to Red, 12-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Protection for all, peace of mind for you. For over 40 years, Mazer Security Alarms has proudly served El Paso with superior service and protection. Locally owned and operated, Mazer Security Alarms created Super Switch technology to prevent false alarms and keep your business and family safe. You can afford the best. For your free quote or to upgrade your existing system, call Mazer Security Alarms at 915-590-0033. That's 915-590-0033. Mazer Security Alarms.
News on the hour and the hat. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The grueling heat wave slamming the U.S. is not easing up. On Thursday, over 90 million people were in areas that experienced dangerous levels of heat. Forecasters warn the heat dome is expanding in Texas and in the Southwest, and triple digits could drag well into next week and beyond. Over 2,000 heat records have been broken across the southern U.S. from California to Florida since the first heat advisories were posted in early June. The Republican governor of Texas is wading into a legal battle with the Department of Justice over a floating border barrier. The DOJ sent a letter to Greg Abbott laying its complaints against the system of buoys. It's currently bobbing in the Rio Grande near the town of Eagle Pass, which has become a dangerous spot for illegal immigration. Tributes for legendary crooner Tony Bennett are pouring in from all over the world after he passed away Friday morning. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
It's pretty sad to, even though 96 and that he had the diagnosis he had, it's still a shock to face the reality that our national treasure has left us.
His family said Bennett continued to sing at his piano up until the other day with Because of You, his first #1 hit, being the last song he sang. Wall Street is closing mixed to end a busy week for corporate earnings. Liz Warner reports.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average eking out a slight gain to extend its winning streak for a 10th straight day. Shares in American Express and CSX were among the decliners after reporting second quarter results. At the closing bell today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 2 points, the S&P 500 rose 1 point, and the Nasdaq lost 30 points. I'm Liz Warner.
Pfizer says most of the damage caused by a tornado at its plant in North Carolina was to a warehouse facility. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. New Jersey is filing a lawsuit against federal agencies for approving the MTA's congestion pricing plan without conducting a full environmental study. Natalie Migliori reports.
Governor Murphy is forging forward with the suit despite New Jersey's tight relationship with New York.
It brings us zero joy to have to take this step.
As an MTA panel figures out toll prices and exemptions to enter below Manhattan's 60th Street, a future lawsuit against the agency remains on the table.
To be in the proper standing to take legal action, we need to have the concrete elements of the plan. So stay tuned.
Senator Bob Menendez isn't mincing words.
It's highway robbery. It's anti-middle class, anti-small business.
Technology for the program is already being installed in the designated area.
Amazon will let shoppers pay with their palms at all Whole Food stores by the end of the year. Erin Real has more.
Amazon One is a biometric technology that allows users to pay for items at stores by placing a palm over a scanning device. Shoppers first have to connect their palm to a stored credit card. After that, they can pay simply by waving their hand over the kiosk. And the company said it will be available in all of its roughly 500 stores in the coming months. The company is also marketing the technology to third parties and has signed deals with airport stores, sports stadiums, and concert venues.
New York State is okaying marijuana sales at festivals, fairs, and concerts. New York's pot farmers complained about all the marijuana they've harvested that's just sitting around unsold because the state's been so slow to roll out its legal marijuana dispensaries. Only 20 are open statewide, so the Cannabis Control Board is giving farmers the go-ahead to sell stockpiled weed at concerts, fairs, and festivals in locations that have no legal pot shops. They can also partner with a processor who will be allowed to sell marijuana edibles and vape cartridges. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Green. That's green. Enter it now.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Don't miss store-wide savings during the truckload event at Lowe's. Right now, save on major appliances and get an additional 10% off in-store clearance appliances. Lowe's knows home improvement. Valid through 8/9. Exclusions apply while supplies last. Selection varies by location. See Lowes.com for details.
Are you a business owner, CEO, or responsible for marketing? If you are, iHeartMedia can help you reach your goals and find new customers. We reach more consumers in your target area than anyone else. And we can give you access to those potential customers more cost-effectively across radio, digital, podcasting, and social. We'd love to show you how iHeartMedia can work for you. From your cell, dial pound 250 and say keyword great results. That's pound 250 and say great results.
Hi, I'm Burt Ward, Robin from TV's Batman, inviting you to feed your dog natural, non-GMO, Gentle Giants dog and puppy food. Dogs eating Gentle Giants and following our special feeding and care program are living as long as 27 healthy, active years with a wonderful quality of life. Holy wow, 27 years! Think of all the extra years you could enjoy with your dog at Target, H-E-B, and stores near you. Try Gentle Giants cat and kitten food too.
Millions of kids in America depend on the meals they get at school. When school's out for the summer, many of those meals disappear. Kids and teens can get free meals right in their neighborhoods, provided by local schools and community groups. To find the nearest meal site for your children, just text the word food to 304-304 or go online to nokidhungry.org/help. No questions asked or registration required. This service is made possible by No Kid Hungry.
Only iHeartRadio gives you access to all of your favorite radio stations.
The Rod Ryan Show.
It's the Woody Show.
It's Elliot in the morning.
All of the once-in-a-lifetime events. All of the best free curated playlists. The best bands. All of the great podcasts for every interest.
The stuff they don't want you to know.
All of the mind-blowing contests.
$20,000.
Awesome.
All of your favorite superstars.
This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters.
Best of all, it doesn't cost a thing. Download the absolutely free iHeartRadio app now.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of commentary, a lot of comments, a lot of likes, reacts, and all the things in between, including Matt Olson, Ion Graham, RJ, Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, Ida Besa Gardner, James Holmes, as well as, can't forget, Angel Rueda with the love over there. So there's a lot of conversation that's happening over there. And I got to tell you, I had a little bit of a personal, emotional roller coaster ride over the course of that news update from either the very serious, including, I'll bring up here, I meant to do at the very top of the show, but I finally found the email I was looking for, of the response from Governor Greg Abbott to some of these border policy and questions they're going through, straight up to the, we've got too much pot in New York, like that they've changed the laws because of it. I'm sorry if you heard me in the background cracking up a bit. I couldn't help it, because saying, well, we've just got too much. What are we going to do with all this pot? I couldn't handle it. In any case, as we did have to unfortunately demonstrate at the end of this last segment, if you do say any of those deadly words, we will have to remove the call. And the way it works is, for those of you online, since it's real time and Facebook has different policies, y'all going to catch it. For the way it goes on air, we do have the delay systems in place for that. So yeah, we've had our Baba Booies in the past, and we can deal with those. Any case, let's get back to those and the comments there. Again, some of the things coming in, such as Dylan talking about, and I'm pretty sure this is just an alliteration, slippery slope of Slovenia from Willie Jenkins. And Buddy Vi is asking, Obama appointed Biden president. I took that as a, there's some of the phrases I've heard that could be argued upon, that this is the third term of the Obama administration, but that's because of the involvement with the previous one is the only reason. If he hadn't been vice president, would he have been necessarily chosen as the nominee in the previous time? So I didn't take it as a rote, but I mean, it's a rhetorical line. I'll take it that way. And yeah, all the ones ever calling about language, just know it's well, you're not going to get through the air. And RJ saying, yeah, sell it cheap in a saturated market. What else can I tell you? And yeah, there's just just a ridiculous situation. So before we get back to those phone calls here, just want to mention at least part of what Governor Greg Abbott, and he often puts out regular updates through his email distribution through the official the Governor Abbott press office, updates on the Operation Lone Star, this one entitled Combats President Biden's Humanitarian Crisis. So definitely amping up on that rhetoric and specifically responding to a letter about, as has been in the news updates, about the potential of suing over those floating maritime barriers due to the impact on international agreements. But also in that same release and update from the governor is specifically a Operation Lone Star statement on addressing illegal crossings. Specifically a statement from Texas Border Czar Mike Banks, DPS Director Steve McCraw, and Texas Adjutant General Major General Thomas Swelzer, I think I'm saying that one right, saying on the directives given under Operation Lone Star, saying, quote, no orders or directions have been given under Operation Lone Star that would compromise the lives of those attempting to cross the border illegally. The Texas Department of Public Safety and Texas Military Department continue taking steps to monitor migrants in distress, provide appropriate medical attention where needed, and encourage them to use one of the 29 international bridges along the Texas-Mexico border where they can safely and legally cross, with migrants from over 150 countries encouraged by open border policies to risk their lives, make this dangerous trek to enter the country illegally. Texas is deploying every tool and strategy to deter and repel illegal crossings between ports of entries, and goes on to further mention the policies of the current administration. So definitely a little bit of shooting back there, but of course, in response to some of the whistleblower in their own right reports that are getting investigated by the Texas Department of Public Safety about certain reports that have been made about including being instructed to push people back into the water. So definitely this, again, they're off in the updates, but this one feels a little bit more, if I had to categorize it or qualify it, a little bit more substantive with a lot of specific updates and specific reports coming in as part of this. I mean, usually it's just hey, here's how many people Texas has sent to other places, including the latest numbers, over 10,000 to both New York and D.C., over 4,000 to Chicago, over 2,000 to Philadelphia, and then like a 300 and 160 over those numbers technically to Denver and Los Angeles respectively. But this one feels a little bit more on the defensive if I had to categorize it at all. Anyway, let's go back to those phone lines now. Again, full up at the moment, but keep that number handy, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have on the line here Eric on the east side with us right now. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Hello there. Yeah, in regards to Andrew, millions of gun owners use marijuana and purchase guns and are not charged with gun charges like Hunter Biden was by the Trump-appointed attorney. The only reason the gun charge was pursued was because he was the President Biden's son. Millions of people use marijuana and purchase firearms. They are not prosecuted. Biden would have went under the radar like those millions if he wasn't Biden's son. Conservatives like Andrew just can't think for themselves, even when Democrats are prosecuted for crimes. And even when they're prosecuted for crimes, they view it as proof that this baseless lie that our justice system and FBI are unfairly going after conservatives and not going after Democrats. And that mindlessness was promoted yesterday by Republicans in Congress. Like, there was another attempt to poison the well of the FBI, our national security agencies, and our justice system by traitorous Republicans on the Orwellian-named Weaponization of the Federal Government Committee, led by the traitor Jim Jordan, promoting the fictional narrative about some fictional deep state, which is a false narrative that used to only be promoted by Alex Jones and other full-blown fringe conspiracy theorists. And now this absurd concept is promoted by Republican leadership in Congress and those on this station to get the public to blindly dismiss the investigations into Trump's crimes against the country that he's being held accountable for. Like, as part of these efforts, to destroy, these efforts to destroy public confidence in our justice system, in the recent past, Jim Jordan promoted a false narrative that the FBI is going after everyday Christians, that they're going after the average Joe Christian. And this lie was to poison the FBI as well. Like, it's important to know where this false narrative originated. Like, in the past, Jerry said, he said, and I quote, Basically, they're doing the same thing to Christians, and they're right. Our government is doing the same thing the German government did to Jews in the 1930s. So heads up, Christians. This was a clear-cut case of the minimization of the systemic extermination of Jews, like for partisan political reasons. And you defended this absurd view because you were also deceived into believing that there's some deep state plot against Christians by your right-wing information sources. Like, it's important to know, like, when it comes to fact-checking or doing accurate research, if only Alex Jones-like information sources and right-wing religious blogs are reporting on something, then that's a major red flag. You know, that story's not true. Like, when you fact-check and look at that source of this narrative about some plot against Christians, it originated from an FBI memo leaked by some opportunistic Christian conservative in the FBI who's now a conservative talk radio host. And this memo, he leaked it to a pro-QAnon blog that he now works for called Uncover DC. And this, you know, he could have chosen to leak it to a more reputable source, but they chose this one specific one. Like, when you look at the memo, like, and Jim Jordan is promoting this narrative coming from this one specific source, like in Congress. And when you look at this memo, you know, itself, like 2 full pages of the memo were excluded, and parts of it that are marked unclassified, sections are blacked out, entire sections of it are covered up, and its endnotes are covered up. Like, any credible source looking at these facts and see that this Christian conservative propagandist they would see that he is bad faith and trying to deceive. Like, that memo was titled interest of racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism in radical traditionalist ideology almost certainly presents new mitigation efforts. Like, if you were to read this memo, you would see Jim Jordan and right-wing media are lying about saying that it's persecuting Catholics or Christians, and, you know, to poison the well of the FBI. Like, the memo specifically says it's targeting 9 specific radical traditionalist Catholic organizations known for its anti-Semitic hate speech and extremist bigoted views. It wasn't just a sweeping operation to go after traditionalist Catholics or people who go to Latin masses. That's nonsense and lies Jim Jordan and right-wing media told you that led you to defend Jerry's anti-Semitic views or characterizations.
I gotta tell you, I do love it when I'm able to outsource my understanding of my values and morals to you. It saves me just a whole lot of time here, except you get a few things wrong here, including the idea that me saying that someone has the right to say something is therefore defending the point that they're making. Causation is not correlation, among other things. And I mean, sure, there's some filings on this from the judiciary.house.gov on this, which, I mean, of course, is currently controlled by, among, of course, Chairman Jim Jordan. So I'm sure you're not going to accept that one here. But specifically on the idea that, I mean, okay, let's just put it this way. At the very least, if you're going to do such an investigation or even create a memo on this, it has to be done incredibly carefully because of the way that can obviously play. I mean, if someone was saying that, anyone who doesn't like taxes may be a radical person who wants there to be no government at all, I mean, is there going to be someone out there that may believe that? Probably, sure. And should that one person be looked at? Yeah, possibly, particularly if they're looking up spicy recipes, shall we say. But if you're going to say that to someone responding to the idea of this as therefore on the same rack as traitorous, and again, I cite my sources, unlike what you do, including the reporting that I talk about, including what I just mentioned right here. So, I mean, sure, it's really easy to say like, oh, well, all of your sources are bad and bunk, and then you try to poison the well when it comes to the other things about, say, our news partners at KFOX 14, which I know you have your issues with, and I'm not even necessarily disagreeing with you on the point of some of the national reporting, which is why when we talk about them, we're talking about the local stuff, which you never seem to exactly contravene on their reporting here. You just take mostly offense with their, and are often seen shouting over on their Facebook page. But in any case, to say that Alex Jones has any influence on this show, it sounds like your personal fever dream more than just about anything else. But let's just put it this way. The even idea of developing based on religious I mean, even has been much as it's been decried on the other side of things, and has often been the subject of other consternation for, say, Muslim or any of those types of different religious sects within it. The idea of that happening, particularly in the Catholic faith, is upsetting to a different subset of the population in its own right, and we're seeing part of that right now, because even the specter of it has been enough, given what has previously happened, to make it seem like, okay, it raises that same kind of concern, which is why any of those level investigations, even if it's just a memo on it, like, just because you have the power to PowerPoint something doesn't mean that you should, because of the way it can kind of blow up like this. Now, do I take Jim Jordan as a necessarily good source of information in any way? I mean, he's definitely got his own agenda. I mean, he's a politician, let's be perfectly honest here. So, but the fact that this is him, the memo, interests of racially and ethically motivated violent extremists and radical traditionalist Catholic ideology almost certainly presents new mitigation opportunities, as you said there, and what has been having some violence since at least the start of this year. It kind of goes in the same vein, I guess, at least it's mentioned in the same breath that I have seen from other such national sources on the idea of it being in the weaponization of the IRS previously to specifically look at and targeting things. I mean, okay, there's a couple of factors that go on here, including the fact that the U.S., by some measures anyway, has more laws than most other countries. And that means that not necessarily all of the laws, I mean, there's not a cop standing by everyone all the time, so not all laws are being enforced, but it means that there is a selection of enforcement. And unfortunately, as often comes with that, particularly at the national level, there can be political implications that come along, like you were mentioning there with Hunter Biden. He wouldn't have faced such potential penalties if it weren't for his high-profile nature. And as you said there yourself, some implications coming from the decisions being made by the people involved in the back end here. And so that's the kind of same implication. It's very interesting that you say in the same breath that there's not a two-tier justice system, but then also there are certain things that are being unequally applied. I guess if we're not going to call that tiers, what are we going to call that? Justice and Justice Premium, subscription service? I don't know how we're going to end up resolving that. But the idea that, I mean, it's gotten a lot of play on the internet, and the idea that, Latin Mass is a signifier for there being increased concern. Whoever wrote that memo probably got fired. I'm just going to put it that way. Or at the very least, has gotten probably put on, radar duty in Alaska. What is the old cliche? And just had his clothes mailed to him. Because the idea of not handling that incredibly carefully is just a bad idea. And if you're unhappy with the people who are calling out about this, I'm not going to call you poisoning the well for mentioning poisoning of the well. Calling out someone putting out bad information is reasonable. But let's also not pretend that you don't have your own biases here, including the fact that this is my paraphrasing of your substantive statements, that there is no reasonable or moral way someone can consider themselves a conservative in this modern day and age, given the way that you constantly rail against them here. So I'll take it with a grain of salt in this way as well. Go ahead and take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we got more calls, more comments, more of everything we do at this point during the show on the line there. So if you want to get on the line, of course, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere. Mazer Security Alarms, your local solution for all your security needs, residential, home, anywhere in between. They have a full suite of solutions, including audio, Wi-Fi cameras, panic and medical alerts, home security systems, and security systems and packages for any of your situations. No job too big or too small for them. So to give them a call to get your free quote and to look at what the options are for you, 915-590-0033. That's 915-590-0033.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
We've had 2 accidents in the same location in the last hour, so it's a little confusing. I-10 westbound at Loma Land. The latest accident has the left lane blocked there. An earlier crash has vehicles off to the right, and there's another crash. I-10 westbound at Lee Trevino. All vehicles are off to the right there. Needless to say, we got some stop-and-go traffic on the I-10 westbound. Back to the loop, it's a 7-minute delay. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Since 2010, Blindster has sold millions of custom blinds, shades, and shutters to satisfied customers across the country with 20,000 5-star reviews and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. Custom blinds at low prices and free shipping. Blindster.com.
No, not now.
That sounds like it's going to cost you.
I know what to do. I'm going to cashnetusa.com. I can apply in minutes, get an instant decision, and if approved, I could have the money in my account as soon as the same business day.
When you need money fast, be the hero. Go to cashnetusa.com to apply for the money you need now. The exact timing as to when your loan funds will be available will be determined by your banking institution.
Attend the El Paso Gun Show this weekend, July 22nd and 23rd at the Forum Ballroom on 3800 Maddox in El Paso, Texas. See dealers selling the finest in modern guns, custom knives, ammo, scopes, rifles, shotguns, and more. Buy, sell, and trade at the El Paso Gun Show this weekend, July 22nd and 23rd at the Forum Ballroom, 3800 Maddox, El Paso, Texas. Get $2 off admission by going to azgunradio.com. That's azgunradio.com.
Attorney Joe Cordell. Business owners and professionals face special challenges in divorce court. In addition to everything else going on, they have to contend with allegations that they are earning more than they are, coupled with claims on their business or practice itself. Clients with assets depend on their divorce lawyer's skills in these matters, and that's why it's so important to hire someone that has those skills.
Schedule an appointment with one of Cordell & Cordell's Dallas-Fort Worth area attorneys. Offices in Dallas, Fort Worth, and St. Louis. CordellCordell.com.
Research shows people ignore radio ads. While I want you to remember that Liberty Mutual customizes and saves you hundreds on home insurance, I know no one's listening, so I can say anything. I can even tell Jenny that I never stop thinking about us. Sometimes I almost call, but I only truly feel safe revealing this in the privacy of my nationally broadcast radio ad.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com. Savings may vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.
Liberty, 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 liberty. Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
It's important to know what's going on, especially around the world.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch.tv, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk, and a lot of conversations going on there. Including Marky Mandingo saying to try to make pork belly tonight. I got it at Quintero's, $4.99 a pound. Will be served with sheep butt ramen noodles, and the sesame seeds were expensive. Hey, whatever works for you. I haven't made that in a minute. Did make some ramen the other day. It was not the fancy kind, so maybe closer to what you were doing there anyway. In any case, a lot of different points get brought up and a lot of different ideas getting talked about. I will say that the FBI says, oh no, they are not doing that one anymore. But at a certain point, we weren't going to do it, and as it was oh no, we're getting called out on it. We better stop it because anyway. And if you're unhappy about the fact that I'm not agreeing with you entirely, it's going to call me as wanting to burn down the country. It's hilarious. I gotta say. In any case, let's go ahead and get back to those phone lines now. Again, full up at the moment, but keep the number handy, 915-544-5876-544-KTSM. We do have Frankie and Messia on the line with us here right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
All right, I got to tell you, it's a beautiful day in downtown Messia. I'm in my garage. It's 104 degrees.
Oof.
I'm on my third beer. I just started my second shot of whiskey, and I hope I can comport myself appropriately for the duration of this call. Why don't you say something?
Sure.
Right? This is a sad circumstance because I want everybody out there as solemn remembrance. The great Tony Bennett died today. You know Tony Bennett, Andrew? You know Tony Bennett?
Oh, well, I mean, not personally, but familiar with his work, yes. And he, of course, got introduced to a whole nother next generation with his collaboration duet series that he did with Lady Gaga. So, I mean, yeah, I think he's very much remembered.
No, you're right. I mean, what an incredible person. beautiful singing that he did. It's so sad when you got that kind of a circumstance. But anyway, let me say something. Right now, so much to talk about, so little time. Where do you begin? Well, let me start right out of the box here. Right, the thing about it, you see what's happening on the west coast of Florida. They've got this horrible disease washing up on the west coast of Florida, which is a harbinger of, I would think, the larger sense of what's going on with this world. Now, you can argue, by the way, I heard that awful Andrew use my name, and I don't know why he did. But nevertheless, the point is, climate change, global warming, I don't care how you do it, there's something to be said about it. And if we don't address it appropriately, I think as humanity, as humans, we're done. The only thing that's going to be left on the planet is cockroaches. Conservative cockroaches, for crying out loud. What do you think of that?
I'd be very interested to know how you would measure the political leanings of cockroaches themselves here. But I will say this, that there are both natural phenomenon that can happen. I mean, it's estimated or through geologic records that there were technically nuclear reactors that existed on the African continent, but we're talking about millions of years ago by the prevalence of certain isotopes that naturally occurred there, and the fact that water levels would be, would allow for then the fusion reactions to occur, and then when they got too hot, it would go away. So these things naturally occurred, and I mean, may not be totally reliable and usable in the nuclear reactor way. And yet, someone even knowing that possibility, I mean, it's almost sounds fantastical, but it's an interesting thing to look into. No one would be saying that, and therefore, what happened with the Fukushima reactor and the massive release of radiation from that is fine, because there's differences there, right? And again, the idea that humans can have no impact on the viability of life on this globe when we could blow it up several times over, not that we've done that, but I mean, it's been a slower process, obviously. It's laughable at its face and ends up being a bit of cope in its own right, but also with the the combination of there being like, what are the solutions? What are you going to do about it? Because the devil is always in the details. Because even if you're saying, hey, we need to stop this bad thing, and we're going to do it by killing everyone on the planet. I mean, there's the whole Georgia Guidestone situation, which is its own weirdness that I'm not going to try to, well, I guess I've invoked it already here. But point is that there's good and bad ways to go about things. And if we're not talking about how we end up going about it, it ends up being this kind of circular discussion of, well, no, you're right, or no, I'm right. And nothing ends up getting done.
No, hear everything you just said. And you're an intelligent individual. I believe that. I believe that.
Play one on TV
but
anyway.
Here's the thing. You either have very intelligent people, scientists, climatologists, I don't care how you want to look at it. And if these people spend all their time studying this stuff and saying, this is what's going to happen, how in the world does any intelligent person discard that? How did they discard that? Because, well, I don't care. You're lying. It's a political thing. You're lying to me. You hate Donnie Doofus, and that's the only reason that you're saying what you're saying. This is insane. You've got people out there that study this stuff 14 different ways to Sunday, and then your people still put their heads in the sand, for crying out loud. Anyway, I want to say something. I heard Amber about 5 weeks ago, and she was on the radio. I want to tell you, she's great. She's great. You got to put her on again, Andrew. She is a star. I'm telling you, she's a star. Put her on again.
We'll be sure to pass that along, and we do have some more segments that we're planning on coming up here, so don't worry, that was not a one and done type of appearance.
Oh, I'm so happy about that, because she really is. She's such a darling. I mean, she sounds great. She's got that right voice for the radio. And I mean, you guys, you got a winner there. All I'm saying, you got a winner. That's all I'm saying.
Well, appreciate the feedback and all the commentary, and appreciate the call. So you have a good one there.
All right. right, take care, Andrew.
All right, have a good weekend as well. With that, we'll go ahead and take that next break right now, and I will pass it along. I think that she's got some work outside of the studio right now. Amber is our producer who has been a guest for some of those What's the Deal with Blank segments previously, and she did the fill-in co-hosting while I was out of town around the Juneteenth holiday, visiting some of our other locations. So don't worry, she's still around, and she'll be back on the air before too long. In any case, let's take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we'll get you more of the calls, comments, more of, well, what we do on Friday. And if you want to get on that line, of course, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. At least one person is dead after a violent crash in far east El Paso. The top of one of the cars was sheared off in the crash, leaving only a mangled frame behind. The crash happened this morning on Gateway East near Eastlake Boulevard. 3 middle lanes were closed while sheriff's deputies cleared the scene. 2 cars were involved in the crash. A second person was taken to a local hospital with life-threatening injuries. A water rescue today in El Paso's Upper Valley ended with a body being pulled out of the water. The call went out at Donovan and an area near Rosa's Cantina. About 30 minutes later, the fire department tweeted that a body had been recovered from a canal. They turned the scene over to law enforcement. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Multiple crashes, multiple vehicles involved, all on the I-10 westbound. 2 of those accidents at Loma Land. I-10 westbound at Loma Land, all vehicles are off to the right, and a crash involving a couple of vehicles off to the right, I-10 westbound at Lee Trevino. Traffic is stop and go back to Penndale on the I-10 westbound. Northbound on the loop in the East Valley at Iron Medics, an accident is off to the right. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. As we go into the weekend, not quite as hot, so some good news there. About a 10% chance of a storm for your Saturday as well as for our Sunday. Not seeing any weather warning for heat, not seeing any advisories or warnings, so good news as well. High around 101 for your Saturday. Continued not quite as hot for your Sunday with a high around 102. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Don't miss store-wide savings during the truckload event at Lowe's. Right now, save on major appliances and get an additional 10% off in-store clearance appliances. Lowe's knows home improvement. Valid through 8/9. Exclusions apply while supplies last. Selection varies by location. See Lowe's.com for details.
Hey, El Paso and surrounding areas. This is Ivan Ochoa, General Manager of Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. Thank you for making us #1 in new car sales again. We make buying a new or certified pre-owned vehicle fast, fun, and easy.
Our goal this month is to break our all-time sales record, so Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat will do whatever it takes to make a deal. Get 10% off MSRP on 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star trucks, $4,000 off MSRP on 2023 Jeep Gladiator trucks and super low 1.9% APR for 72 months, $2,000 off MSRP on 2023 Jeep Wrangler plus 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo, $3,500 off MSRP and 2.9% for 72 months. Worry about your trade or credit? Don't sweat it. Our aggressive lenders will push to approve your credit, even if your credit is less than perfect or if you owe more than the trade is worth. Get huge savings and more for your trade during the Make This a Summer sales event at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat at I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount with CTNL. 1.9% APR is $14.71 and 2.9% is $15.15 per thousand finance. On select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. If you're like many people, you may think custom blinds is a job for expensive professionals. Well, at Blindster, if you have a tape measure and a screwdriver, you can install our custom blinds and save big. Plus, we guarantee they'll fit. Blindster.com.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
In 2007, Marine First Lieutenant Travis Manion was killed in Iraq after saving his wounded teammates. Travis's legacy lives on through the words he spoke before his final deployment. If not me, then who? Words that today fuel the spirit of Travis Manion Foundation. And through TMF, these words can live in you too. Show the world what you're made of, because character is invisible until it's not. Find out how you can strengthen the character of your community alongside empowered veterans, families of the fallen, and inspired civilians at travismanion.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming in the free, reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk, a lot of conversation going on over there, including Edgar Ortiz going to get some ceviche and cold beer himself. Seafood restaurant, and Anthony, he sure calls for it. Yeah, to make sure the ceviche is also cold. I mean, I know it's got all the juices in it, but still be safe out there. Just going to say, like, there's a lot of things I'll trust out of a food truck. That would not be one of them. Just personal decision for me. And other things, including Amanda Moncada saying the U.S. women's soccer team plays in about 1 hour. Yeah, interesting things being brought up there about all the time, and including some other things, including Edgar Ortiz wondering if Frankie went to high school with Tony Bennett, or as someone else put it, Dirt's grandson, potentially. Of course, Talk El Paso brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation, which, of course, the Plaza Classic Film Festival, I misspoke yesterday, it's underway now, though. First, the performance is already going through, and there's a whole lot going on all the way through just about the end of the month, concluding with, on July 30th, the Batman 1989 version, Michael Keaton version, as the conclusion, finale, crescendo of the whole film festival. So find the full list of them, plazaclassic.com. If you've never been down to the Plaza Theater, the beautifully restored Plaza Theater, and that's not just because they're sponsors, I truly believe that myself, and having been there, I may or may not have ever skipped out on work to go and see part of this. I will neither confirm nor deny that, and certainly wouldn't recommend you do that unless you really, really want to. Any case, a lot of stuff there. Again, plazaclassic.com. Anyway, getting back to those phone lines right now. Again, those numbers, we'll squeeze in what we can before the end of the program here. 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We do have Trish on the west side here with us right now. Trish, thanks for joining us.
Hi. I just wanted to ask you about the gas.
Oh, sure thing. What about it?
I remember when Trump was president, he filled up the reserves, right? He filled up the oil reserve.
There's a level that was at them, but under the presidency, yes, they were full.
Yes. Well, I read that he filled it all the way up. And Biden, I know that he called a few of the countries, he called the leaders names, bad names, right? And then he ended up having to beg for oil, and they wouldn't give it to him. They gave him the finger instead. And but so I just wanted to know, are we driving around on the rest of the oil reserve?
I mean, there is.
What happens when it's all gone?
So the good news is we are not going solely off the strategic oil reserve. There were some releases that were being done, and it wasn't that we're not talking about like OPEC oil embargo days back in, I mean, before my time, but 70s in general. I want to call it that, even though I don't know the exact date offhand. But I mean, there was some releases being done. It was mostly on the level of the gas prices. And so it wasn't saying, hey, can you give us any oil? It was basically asking OPEC, hey, can you consider like producing more? But of course, if you produce more, the law of supply and demand, they make less money. There have been times in which OPEC has decided to make more oil, mostly and actually to combat the market share that the U.S. market was getting, because since the prevalence and the advent of hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking, it has made it that there's a whole lot more availability. Even if the U.S. isn't producing all of its own oil, even under the Trump administration, it wasn't making all of the gasoline itself. There was still importation happening of that. But like natural gas, yeah, that's why the U.S. was labeled as a net exporter of energy at that point in time. So there are still gas things coming in, but let's just say OPEC is definitely making their money, and did basically tell the administration to take a hike when they were asking for, hey, could you let the price drop a little bit, make a little bit more? And well, they said no. Simple enough.
Yeah, well, you wonder why. All right, well, thank you.
No, sure thing. Thanks for the point of the call. You have a good one there. All right, and getting more calls on the line here. We do have Stephen on the east side here with us right now. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Andrew. So that's awesome that they're going to show that Michael Keaton Batman. That's one of my favorite ones. I remember seeing the opening show at midnight. It was a very good one. To answer Trish's question, Trump did fill up the reserves a lot. He actually had a proposal to expand those reserves significantly. And his argument was, it's so cheap right now, we should fill it up while we have the chance so that we have more in the future. But Democrats rejected that proposal, so now they're buying it when it's much more expensive. Anyway, so, I mean, I often have to call after Eric calls, and it kind of gets me off on a sidetrack. But something he not only repeats the same things, basically the same things like Raul over and over. I think they both are smoking too much pot because I think they forgot what they regurgitated yesterday. But he always argues to the lowest common denominator. And since he's into logical fallacies, that's basically its own kind of straw man. So basically, if what he considers right-wing person like Alex Jones believes something, then therefore all conservatives think what Alex Jones thinks. So that's just another logical fallacy. And I think you've pointed out that to him a lot. And then when it comes to statistics and, do right-wingers not like statistics and facts and those kinds of things? Well, there's a way to manipulate facts to make the facts seem, or the statistics seem like it's saying something that it's not really saying. And the example was earlier this week, he said that, 97% of scientists think that climate change is man-made and it's catastrophic and it's terrible and all these things. Well, no, 97% believes that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. And so do I. And so does Professor Lindzen of MIT. But he doesn't think it's catastrophic, and I don't think it's catastrophic. And yes, it can cause some warming. And since it was warming already over the last 300 years, and then humans have put some CO2 in the atmosphere, it's going to be rising a little bit more than it otherwise would have. But we are on a long-term cooling trend, and there's always oscillations when you're almost like a roller coaster. It starts high, and then it kind of goes down, and then up, and then down, and up. We were on an upward trend, and we may be boosting that upward trend, but in the long run, it may, in the end, be still a long-term cooling trend. People just don't know that it's so complicated. But the other reason why I wanted to call is there's this idea of, are we going to trust our institutions? Are we going to trust the government, the FBI, elections, all these different things? And historically, a lot of times it was the left that didn't believe in a lot of things having to do with government. The left historically was more critical of the government and the FBI and police and all these different things. But there have been some scandals on both sides. Way back when Kennedy was in a car crash. Remember Senator Kennedy, who was a Democrat, the biggest, strongest Democrat back in that time period.
Ted Kennedy, yeah.
He was cheating. He was in Chappaquiddick. He was cheating on his wife, and they got in a car accident. And he basically left her in the car that was sinking in the water. And forensics said that there was an air pocket in there. But he ran off to his hotel because he didn't want to get caught cheating on his wife. And he basically left her there, and she ended up drowning. And instead of reporting it, that's basically an involuntary manslaughter charge. And he was protected. So, there's lots of times when you go back in time and say, maybe the cops and the justice system wasn't necessarily on the up and up. And there's, of course, the Kennedy assassination. A lot of people thought that was corrupt, and maybe the CIA was involved in different things. But we don't want to necessarily trust our government 100% of the time. Our founders would have never expected us to do that. In fact, they would encourage us not to trust everything the government says and always be looking over their back and making sure that they're not being corrupt. I mean, and the wars that are going on in the past, Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine, we want to make sure that they're not just spending all this money that's going to be corrupted. And speaking of which, when Biden was vice president and his son was getting money, all these millions of dollars for working for Burisma, which is a Ukraine energy company, and Biden said he didn't know anything about it. Well, Biden's family, his son Hunter and his brother, has all these different bank accounts and businesses going on. And all this stuff is coming out more and more. We already knew a lot about it. And President Trump tried to get Zelensky to look into it, and he got impeached for trying to get figure out what actually happened there. But 80 different banks around the world flagged those Biden accounts, his son and his brother, for money laundering. And but the Justice Department really didn't want to look into it. And in fact, it seems like they kind of wanted to protect the Bidens and not look into it. And so then you compare that to Trump. It's like, well, what did Trump do? He supposedly looked at legal avenues with the electors to see if they say, well, if this election was corrupt and all these mail-in ballots were not verified the way the state constitutions say they should in Pennsylvania and these different states, then can the electors maybe choose something different because they don't think it was on the up and up, which was the same thing that the Democrats were pushing for when Trump was elected. Here's a Washington Post article, November 24th, 2016, Washington Post. The Constitution lets the Electoral College choose the winner. They should choose Clinton. So Eric and Raul are very selective on their memories, on what they choose to look into, their biases. And then they call in here every single day and spew their nonsense. And they're not fair judges, arbiters of truth. And then they try to characterize people like me and people like you who are like reasonable and trying to discuss the issues. I mean, think about all the times you've tried to tell Eric, it's like, look, I'm not interested in like, well, how do we, is it real, or how much climate change is human, or how much is it not? What are the solutions? And that's way over his head. He's low IQ. He can't figure out what you're trying to say. And so let me try to give Eric a little parallel here.
Okay.
COVID. We knew that COVID was a disease that affected elderly, and it was dangerous and it could kill people. What's the solution? Are we going to lock everyone up? Are you going to lock up your children in your homes? Are you going to put masks on 2-year-old kids who aren't even at risk for this disease? The stats that they pushed out about hospitalizations of children were people who were in the hospitals, not for COVID, but with COVID. Like they went in there for a broken arm, they tested for COVID. Oh, he has COVID, but he's here for the broken arm. And those were the stats they pushed out to make people think that kids were in danger and to push them to get the vaccination for the kids who weren't really at risk. And so those are the kinds of stats that we want to look at and be critical about. So I wanted to go on that little rant because they call in every single day and they're not listening to what people are actually saying.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have encountered that. And listen, I mean, there's a thing that we do particularly when we have different candidates or issues on here, like we did, I guess, most recently with, say, Prop K or any of those issues, or some of the candidates that were on there. I mean, it was mostly about the school boards. Is that, okay, you've put forth these ideas. How are you going to achieve it? Because, I mean, there's a whole lot of, you're right, I'm wrong, or this is the right way to go about it, and you're wrong about it. Like that kind of bickering and argumentation can go on functionally infinitely. But the thing that often cuts through that is, okay, how are you going to achieve it? Again, you can put forth a goal of, hey, you know what? I don't want anyone to get sick. Awesome. That's a great goal. How are you going to achieve it? And if it's coming down to we're going to require these, the quote unquote surgical masks to be used, when the efficacy of those was, even by the most generous estimates, maybe about 45% at most. And it ended up being the bike helmet situation. I've talked about that previously, that when it comes to even outside of any of these, because there's a lot of political implications whenever you bring up COVID, even to this day, unfortunately, that the idea of, okay, we need to increase bicycle safety in our community. What has a lot of communities done, saying, oh, we're going to require bike helmets, and then that's it. That's all they do, as opposed to looking at, okay, we're going to require, different lighting, signage, bike lanes, creating that. Nope, we've got bike helmets. We're good. It ends up being what is the best way we can make it look like there is a solution, as opposed to actually dealing with it, which is one of the reasons when someone says, when we're talking about, the whole what to do about climate change or the solutions aspect of it, if it's about, well, we're just going to tax it all, it's like, okay, but that's not a solution unless you're talking about incredible amounts of taxes. So what do you actually want to do about it? I mean, policy is the only way I can think of to cut through some of this clutter, because if we're just going to have it back, you're wrong, or no, you're wrong, or no, you're bad, you're evil, like that level of discussion, I mean, it feels like sometimes generously call it middle school, but it feels increasingly like kindergarten level of no, you're bad kind of discussion here. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's get into what are you going to do about it, and how do you expect to actually achieve that? Because if we're not talking solutions, I mean, a lot of these problems that end up being brought up are, it's about, well, we need to solve this problem. But if it's someone else will figure it out, again, it's not really being in it's just feeling punitive sometimes about wanting to smack someone around with that you disagree with their standpoint on.
Yeah. So, and most of what the conservatives are pushing back on is a lot of this like really hardcore propaganda about climate and things like that. That's where most of the pushback is. And I've seen, on the TV, when you look at the temperature maps, and you'll see all this red. If you go back a couple decades, those same temperatures were like a greenish color. They actually make it look like red, like, oh my goodness, the world's burning up. But those same temperatures decades ago they actually had a different color scheme in order to show similar temperatures. But it's more than that. It's like, yes, it's gotten warmer over the last 300 years. So, of course, it's going to keep getting warmer. So you're always going to keep breaking records, and it's going to be warmer than it was 50 years ago. But it's like wildfires. Anytime there's some kind of weather event, a flood, anything, oh, this is climate change, as if these floods and things didn't happen before. If you look at the IPCC and their actual report, they aren't actually saying that. That a lot of that is propaganda. So we got to push back a little bit on the propaganda. 97% of scientists do not claim it's catastrophic. It is something we need to watch out for, but it's not as serious as people make it sound like. And Raul's like, oh, it's a dirty city, and as if that has something
I still don't get that part. Yeah.
And carbon dioxide. It's like, no, carbon dioxide is a tasteless, odorless gas. And if we took out 60% of the carbon dioxide of the atmosphere right now, all life would die. All plants would die. And when you increase it, plants grow better. So there's not just all downsides. You have to look at everything in the big picture. And also, if all fossil fuels were to stop tomorrow, then half of the world, maybe more, would starve to death within weeks. So there has to be a plan. There has to be solutions.
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
It's not as catastrophic as people claim. And we're trying to be reasonable. And of course, there are people like Raul and Eric and these people, these left wing, they're going to try to argue against the lowest common denominator, that straw man, that really the other side, the smart people and the reasonable people on the other side aren't actually arguing for.
It's entirely possible for two seemingly contradictory things to be true at the same time. It's not often comfortable. I mean, the idea of a simple but wrong versus complicated but true is a calculation we often see, because something, chest thumping of, no, this is the only way it is, and anyone who contravenes me is wrong, often ignores the shades of gray that do exist. Because, they're getting flack from someone out there saying, don't have the intestinal or testicular fortitude to stand by something, because life is complicated. And the simple solutions often be someone trying to sell you something. And that's part of the reason I think we need to discuss things more, talk about things, because it's been shown previously by other studies, even done by the government, that if you just say to someone, nope, this is how it is, and you have to go along with it, as opposed to encouraging discussion, the adoption rate ends up being orders of magnitude greater. Because if you're coming to people where they are, where they live, where they are in their own mentality and their thinking and their experience, as opposed to saying, nope, just trust it. Listen, that's been known for decades now. There are studies going back to literally World War II on this that I'm aware of anyway, and probably before. So that's part of what we're here to do for, because if we're not talking about things, opposed to just saying, and again, preaching is part of it, it is, we're just not doing it right.
Well, have a good weekend.
No, appreciate the point of the call. You have a good one there as well.
Take care.
All right, with that, we're going to have to basically end the show there for today. Went a little bit long in this last segment, but the good news is that we can, of course, do it again next week. Of course, we'll be back again as we do every Monday through Friday. A couple of reminders for you. The El Paso History Radio Show airing tomorrow here on News Radio 690 KTSM at 10 to noon right here on News Radio 690. Going to be talking about specifically the El Paso 150 Sesquicentennial is the phrase that I sometimes got through in the progression of this episode, talking about the celebrations going on for the 150th anniversary of the incorporation of the city of El Paso. So that and a whole lot more. And of course, we got a lot more working on for you in the coming weeks, including on some of these subjects, and another segment coming up with Amber. Don't worry about that. So I want to thank everyone that did tune in, call, and comment, participate in the show. We'll do it again Monday, as we do every Monday through Friday. So until then, until next time, stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles on the road. Have a great weekend, y'all. See y'all next week.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A disabled SUV is blocking the right shoulder, I-10 westbound at the Mesa Street exit. That's causing some minor delays back to Osborne. Stop-and-go traffic continues on the I-10 eastbound. It's down to one lane from Vinton to Red. It's a 10-minute delay. Accident reported Rainer at East Yandell, and an earlier crash on the I-10 westbound at Lee Trevino has cleared. All lanes back open. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Want to save big on custom faux wood blinds, shutters, cellular shades, and more? Shop Blindster today and save up to 50% over comparable blinds from brick-and-mortar stores. Get custom blinds at low prices and free shipping at Blindster.com.
Keep your family and livelihood safe with a stable security system from Mazer Security Alarms. Your trusted El Paso security expert since 1982. You can get the best. Systems start at under $35 per month with upfront purchase to lease options and $0 down payment packages available. Get the peace of mind you deserve with Mazer Security Alarms. For your free quote or to upgrade your existing system, call Mazer Security Alarms at 915-590-0033. Mazer Security Alarms.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Paid for by government.com.
Did you hear? A recent stash of $20 gold Liberty coins from the 1800s has been found. These gorgeous gold coins are as bright and shiny as the day they were struck in the late 1800s, and less than 50 of these gold coins are available. Coin experts are calling this gold find an incredible opportunity. Call 1-800-356-6468, and you are guaranteed a $20 gold Liberty coin minted by the U.S. Mint in the 1800s. But with extremely limited availability, you must call now. These gold Liberty coins from the 1800s are still in uncirculated condition. That is history you can hold in your hand.